What's going on? This is Alan Brown, aka Bully the Kid, and this is my Bass Basics 101 video. In this video, all the instruments that I'm going to be showing you and talking about can be found on Reverb.com, as well as a multitude of other websites that can deliver these basses, these quality instruments, used and new, directly to your door. No muss, no fuss. But let's go ahead and get into the instrument. There are multiple different types of basses that are out there, and I'm going to run through just a few of the ones that I have in a collection here. First one I want to talk about is the precision bass. It's called the precision bass because there is a precision pickup directly in the middle. This is called a pickup here. This down here is called a bridge. These are your control knobs. We'll get to that in a second. This white piece is a pick guard to protect your bass whenever you're using a pick. These are called strings. They are tuned E, A, D, G in standard tuning, from thickest, which is closest to your face, to thinnest, which is furthest away from your face. E, A, D, G. Okay, and these are adjusted by the tuning pegs that are up here. So there's also a Allen key adjustment to fix the neck pitch and stuff like that, but we will get to that. Now, there is one pickup here, and there is one volume and a tone knob which adds or cuts brightness from the tone. So going back to, well, have I heard this bass, and what's really the difference between that and what I'm about to talk about in a second. This bass was popular in the Motown era. Most of the songs that you hear, like that had the Temptations or Jackson 5, most of them use a P bass to get that round, warm tone, and it has something to do with the pickup being directly in the center of the bass. I'm not a bass scientist, so I don't really know the particulars of how or why they decided to do it, but that's what you can expect if you actually have a precision bass or a P bass. Other type of bass from a very beginning standpoint is a jazz bass. Jazz bass has a little bit of a different body shape. It has two pickups here. There are two volume knobs, one for each pickup, and then an overall tone knob that serves the same function as the P bass. It adds or subtracts brightness from the tone coming from the instrument. I talked about some of the pieces. This is a neck, so if you hear it referred to, is it a fast neck? Is it easy to play? Is it quick? This is the neck. The brown piece here this brown wood is called a fingerboard, and the metal bars going across it are called frets, just in case you didn't know. Everything else is pretty much the exact same as the P bass. Only difference is the number of pickups that are on the bass, as well as the controls for it. These are passive basses, which means the two that I just showed you, which means there are no electronics. There is no EQ manipulation possible on these basses. They can be upgraded to add that in, but these basses are naturally passive, which means you don't need any power in the bass to make it work. You just plug it in and pretty much tune up and go. Moving on into the world of active basses and such, we have a PJ bass, and this is also a 5-string. It's the exact same thing as a 4-string. It's just an added thicker string. So this is an added B, as in boy, B string. So B, E, A, D, and G, from your face to the floor. This is really nice because it gives a marrying of both worlds. You have a P pickup in this position, and you also have a jazz pickup in this position. So you can kind of get the same. It's a more of a utilitarian type bass, so it can do a lot of different gigs and do a lot of different feels for what's necessary on the gig, what's being asked of you. Like I said, this is a active bass here, so there is a battery in the back, and the thing that is different, aside from the passive two basses that I just showed you, are now you introduce a volume and a blend knob, which goes between this pickup and this pickup. So you can roll it all the way forward and you have the P bass tone, and you roll it all the way back and you have that jazz bass type tone. Jaco Pastorius type stuff. Y'all can look him up. He's known for playing off the back pickup with the tone all the way off. But because we have the 9-volt battery introduced in this, we now have the ability to add in a treble and a bass control. Now, why would you want to have this? Depending on the venue, you could have acoustics that don't necessarily agree with your bass. So you take into EQing to fit the room. So some venues I've been in are kind of dead spaces. So you have to introduce mid frequencies to that room so that you can cut through in the mixture of all of your bandmates or whoever you're playing with. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about the humbucker. Now, the humbucker pickup, which is basically this is a humbucker right here. This got introduced because recording, some people would solo their pickups and then it would give them a 60 hertz hum across the track, and it's really hard to kind of isolate that and get that out. So the humbucker, which basically took two of the single coils and ran them against each other in polarity, and that canceled out the hum. So they also put it closer to the bridge so that it bites a little bit more, so you can get that solo type feel. But it also adds a little bit more characteristic of a very aggressive tone, which is really cool, especially for the emerging slap tone. Now, for this particular bass, the control is similar to the last one, where there is a volume and then there are also two EQ controls. So we have a volume for this one pickup because there's only one, and then we have treble and bass. So that's manipulatable in the mix. This is also an active bass. So yeah, and this is also extended 5-string, so B, E, A, D, G, just like the last bass that I showed you. Okay, so let's move on. Now, just like there are different iterations of the jazz and P bass, there are different iterations of the humbucker bass. Why would you want to do that? Because sometimes when you have just one humbucker in there, you can lose the warm tone that you could be needing for a particular song. So what's the answer? Answer is this. You take two of those humbucking pickups, you put one closer to the neck, and then you keep this one in the same position. That way you have the tone, the bright, snappy, punchy tone that you originally would be looking for, and then you can dial it back and then bring a little bit more warmness to what your tone is. Also, it makes for a really tight slap sound, and this is more popular with modern bass players. Either you'll see it like this with the pole pieces exposed like that, or it's covered up, and they call those soap bars. Some are humbucking, some are hum canceling, but though they basically look like these blocks here. Now, this is one of the more complicated control setups that are out right now. This is one of the more complicated ones. This is a Sire Marcus Miller bass. You can definitely find these basses on reverb.com, so check them out. I have 4. I love these basses. They all have the same control layout. Let me go ahead and tell you about the control layout of this one. So for this bass, as well as pretty much all their other basses, there is an active and passive switch, so that if your battery dies on the back, which is, it takes 2 batteries, if your batteries die, you can then switch to passive mode, and you don't have to worry about losing a gig or scrambling to find batteries and stuff like that. You could switch it to passive mode, and it goes exactly like any other bass would be. You have a volume, you have a blend, and then you have a tone here, okay, for passive mode. But in active mode, this is how it's set up. So there is a master volume, a master tone that works in passive and active mode. There's the blend knob, there is treble, there is a mid knob, stacked pot, and then a bass knob. Now what's unique about this particular stacked pot is there is the second knob that's on the bottom is a mid frequency sweep. So depending on what room you are in, certain frequencies may die out and you'll get lost in the mix of playing with everybody. So you can dial in what makes you stand out, that you have your lane, so you can cut through the mix and actually be heard. So it's really convenient to have. It's very, very usable depending on what venue you're in. So I found this to be one of my go-to basses. This one, and I have a black one, which, you know, I just like how they feel, I like how they play, I like how they sound. So these are my go-to basses for whatever gig I'm doing. Keeping with that theme, there are other basses that have even more extended range, which is this. Now, the strings are a coated string, so it makes it last a little bit longer while you're playing with it. Also, I think it looks cool on the bass, so I have colored coated strings. But this is the basic jazz bass. It has the same layout as the second bass. So this bass and this bass has the exact same layout. 2 pickups. Only difference is this bass has an extra B string and then also a C string, which is on the bottom. That's adding more range to what you can do and stuff like that. 6-string basses are usually used for soloing and things like that. There are an option for those that want like a bass that can do everything and bring you, like, you can do the solo stuff all in this area, which is the higher frequencies and things like that, very easily, and then slide back down to the low end of the neck. So they are convenient. They are, if you're starting out on bass, I would not recommend you get a 6-string. I will caution you against a 5-string as well, just so you get the mechanics, get the basics of how to play, what notes to play, what works with what, and don't get lost in the extra options you have because you have these extra strings there. So there are many other basses, there are many other combinations of bass guitars. You can do P pickups with a humbucker. I've seen that. That's actually this right here. This is this bass right here. This is a SR655E, and this is a PJ or a P and humbucker combination here. So there are different combinations of how you can set them up. I've seen setups that have 3 jazz pickups, so 3 of these together. There are different iterations of the exact same thing. So hopefully this video gave you a little bit of information. Again, all these basses and all this information can be found online. Reverb.com is a good source of very inexpensive basses that you can check out. And I want to thank y'all for watching. Till next time, this is Alan Brown, aka Bullet the Kid. Y'all be easy.